Hello everyone, my name is Injured Waffles, and today I'm here to bring you my review of No Man's Sky, the controversial video game developed by Hello Games that was released on August 9th, 2016 for PC and PS4, and is finally releasing on July 24th for Xbox One. When the game first released back in 2016, expectations were high for No Man's Sky. Featuring a procedurally generated universe with countless planets to explore, a seamless transition between planet and space, and enough promises to fill this universe, it unfortunately landed with a thud. Between broken promises, missing features from trailers, and a game that turned out to get highly repetitive very quickly, and one that felt boring and monotonous, the community not only felt betrayed, but also outraged, and rightly so. In the 2 years since release, Hello Games has put out 4 updates, with the most recent one being released on July 24th, titled The Next Update, adding new things such as base building, co-op play, vehicles to build, various other quality of life updates, graphical updates. Has this been enough to bring players back and breathe life into No Man's Sky, or should players just avoid this game? Let's dive into this huge universe worth of content and find out. And so to start with the story. Now the story isn't anything revolutionary, but it does help you to point to where different things are that you need to do, while keeping an air of mystery about what you are doing. Now when you first start the game, you're suffering a bad case of where am I? From there, you're introduced to game systems through tutorials, little snippets of lore from terminals, crash frigates, destroyed bases, and ancient structures that are scattered throughout every single planet that you go to, as well as dialogue that you have between different species and different characters throughout the game. Now the story isn't definitely something that stands out in my opinion. They try to go with the vague mystical route, sort of like a what is this and what is that. It's not that it's bad, but it's just nothing that really made me go wow while playing it. It is fun to explore through it though, and it usually does try to push to you all of the system that the game is trying to offer. Via the showing you how to use warp drives, fixing your ship, how to fly, how to mine, different things like that. And it's always a very nice thing when game developers use the story as a sort of way to convey the gameplay mechanics. Now, you actually have a choice of following through with the storyline or just outright saying no to it. Personally, me, for when I started playing through, I chose to go through the story, but I do appreciate that the option is there. Always nice to have that. And so to move on to gameplay, guys, and there is definitely a lot going on in No Man's Sky that needs to be talked about here. So the big crux of the game is absolutely exploring a vast procedurally generated galaxy that has no end, or at least any end that we will ever physically be able to reach. Thankfully, the exploration is, for the most part, engaging, with the coolest part being able to seamlessly transition from space to planet, and vice versa without a loading screen. And I really want to touch on that loading screen, guys. No matter how many times I landed on a planet or took off into space, that lack of a loading screen was always magical for myself, and I love it every time I do it. Now, another thing that I want to talk about is how empty the game is and cathartic it can be. The vast emptiness of this universe is in a way meditative and really helps to drive home the point of you being a small speck. The universe is gigantic. The planets are for the most part barren wastelands or tropical lush forests. But there is something that they added with the update, and the big thing that has changed mechanic-wise is that there are a lot more NPCs inhabiting outposts, space stations, and bases. And this does help to break up that monotony of that loneliness of you feeling like you're alone all the time. So it's not necessarily an empty universe anymore either. And of course, with this type of game, you also have typical survival game mechanics where you need to gather materials in order to survive. You craft items and refuel ship drives. And this is not overly tedious to gather any of these, and certain planets contain certain materials, and it's definitely not hard to get what you need to move on to the next planet or eventually move on to the next star system. Now, one of the nicer things that they've added is the ability to refine elements to make something rarer out of it. Think sort of like Minecraft being able to smelt iron blocks down to iron bars and things like that. It's not necessarily a game changer, but it does shake up what you have to do in the game a little bit by forcing you to explore further out to find the elements that you need to refine. For some people though, however, this could also be seen as a mechanic in order to extend what you're doing and just adding another layer of what you need to do. Now, With the new next update, Hello Games has opted to give the players to build a base of any size. With the ability to share bases, this does help to lend to that system community with other players that was missing when the game first came out, and it's definitely something that's a lot of fun, being able to build a base that you can go to and revisit via Portal or something of that sort. It is a lot of fun to be able to build a base on a planet and then call something your own and make a mark on the universe. Now, there are a lot of hazards on planets that can stack up to make your life difficult. The biggest thing that the player will be dealing with is, however, is the planet trying to kill you. Whether it be radiation, heat, super cold temperatures, storms that can crop up, you use a hazard support system that helps take care of you. On top of that, you also have a life support system that you need to make sure is topped off as well. And this is always being depleted unless you're in certain places like a base or an outpost. And no matter what you do, these need to make sure that they are topped off. And if either of those depletes, the life bar of yours is going to go bye-bye. And there is a certain amount of tedium that just comes with making sure that you have all of these systems that you need to make sure stay fueled. Between your life support, mining tool, hazard systems, takeoff launchers, warp system, pulse systems, the terrain tool, bolt caster, different things like that. It is a lot that is added up that you need to keep track of, and honestly sometimes that becomes a little bit tedious and a little bit overbearing, especially in the early game when you're trying to keep up with all of these systems and remember everything that you need to craft. Thankfully they do have something that you can pin for a formula, but even then there's still a lot of systems going on, and that does make it a little bit tedious, though progression does help you to keep up with this. As you start upgrading your tools, your life support system, ship's fuel and such, you do become more effective at not needing to refill everything up as much. Now this is simple, but it is effective, and this progression does feel good, especially as you start finding tougher enemies and needing to mine more complex elements. Now, speaking of combat, it is relatively simple when you're on the ground, with your multi-tool having the ability to have different attack attachments like a bolt caster or an assault rifle type attachment, or even a shotgun attachment that will allow you to fight the sentries that are in the game and animals on the ground that are trying to kill you. Now, ground combat isn't really anything to write home about, and I don't feel like it's actually going to be an important distinguisher. It's definitely not going to be the next Call of Duty, that's for absolute sure. Now, space combat, however, does feel infinitely more fun in my opinion. And with what space engagements I did play through, they always felt tough, but they never really felt unfair either. The ships do control very well. Combat didn't feel like it was too easy or too difficult. A lot of fun, and something that I think was definitely a highlight of the game. And also, speaking of space exploration is also a lot of fun. There is a lot of exploring in this game, guys, whether it be on the ground or in space, and exploration does feel good. It feels good going on to a different planet and seeing what's going to be on there. And it's also fun to fly through star systems, worrying about whether or not you're going to be attacked, or being able to see a bunch of freighters that just warp in and having the chance to trade with them or something. That also is a lot of fun, and honestly, the exploration is the biggest part of this game, and something that I still really love even after all of the new updates that have added everything into it. Now, there's also a chance for you to own a freighter now in this game, which opens up expeditions for you to do. These are various different missions that allow you to send off a separate crew to complete missions to earn yourself money or materials. You have the opportunity to upgrade the freighter, which will give you a better chance to complete these missions. Now, this can be a fun little distraction, but I mainly just use my freighter as a storage space. But again, it is an option, and it does help breathe life into the game, and it's always nice to have something more to do. Now, I'm going to quickly talk about the currency of the game, which I haven't talked about yet. This is called units, and you can earn this through a variety of different activities in the game. Exploring a planet, trading, scanning animals, attacking trade convoys, selling materials, being a pirate, things like that. There's a lot of variation there when it comes to how you pick up units, and it's very easy to obtain a lot of it. And you're going to need that, especially as you start playing through the game, in order to afford some of the more expensive ships and multi-tools that are in the game. Now, co-op is another big thing that was added to this as well, and this is actually a really awesome implementation into the game. Up to 3 players can join in on you, and you can basically do anything you want. There are absolutely no restrictions when another player joins in on your game, and they can do anything that they would be able to do if they were solo, including harming or even killing you. Now, that is to say there is no PvP in this game. It's mainly just 4-player co-op, so nothing really happening there PvP-wise. There's also no tethering in this game, so you can go as far away from each other as possible, and the game will not try to bring you back together. Now, guys, this is a very, very good implementation of co-op in this game, and it is absolutely a blast to play with other people. And I would highly, highly recommend it if you can explore the galaxy with someone else. Definitely a lot of fun. Now, to talk about the graphics, the game does look good with a wide variety of different planet biomes. And something important that was added with this update is just how much better everything looks, especially the planets. Terrain has been vastly improved with more foliage, trees, rocks, animals, and all of these are all on the appropriate planets, of course. Lush planets look appropriately green and full of life. Frozen planets are white with snow, and barren wastelands are dotted with rocks and obvious lifelessness. Now, the problem that I still have with this game, and the problem that I still have with planets in general, is that no matter how many times you go to a different planet, after a while, these planets, they all start to feel familiar and similar. And that does make the game feel a little repetitive. Even though the animals and the plants look different, the planets still themselves feel the same. Now, outside of the special planets that look different later in the game, everything starts blending together. And the only thing that, like I said, really differentiates them is the different animals that are always hilarious, by the way, depending on how the procedural generator decides that it wants to make them up. And, you know, different types of trees and the different materials that are on planets. Now, the animals, like I said, are procedurally generated, and this definitely creates some humorous combos between animals, like a dancing pineapple or a giant looking crab thing with tendrils on the back. The animals do look very interesting, but they're not really that great looking either. The character models, however, they do look really good. The alien races all look distinct, and they all look like they plausibly fit in the universe. And one thing that I really want to touch on, however, is the new third-person mode that was added with the most recent update. This looks really good. Hello Games went above and beyond in making sure that the character that you play as has nice fluid movements and translating everything well from first person into third person, which can sometimes be hard to do. Now, the amount of character customization that you can do with this character is impressive and broad as well, with the ability to change your race and the colors that you're wearing, as well as being able to change some of the different cosmetic items like your gloves or your helmet or your backpack that you're wearing on your spacesuit. Now, the spaceships themselves also look very nicely detailed, and they are amazingly awesome. Different kinds of varied spaceships are in the game, and they all look good. And when ships get damaged, sparks start flying off, it starts smoking, and you can see this especially when you start fighting other ships. The spaceships are a big part of this game, and they do look good. For the most part, this entire game does look really good. Now, as for the performance of the game, performance-wise, it holds up fairly well on the consoles, running at 900p 30 FPS on the Xbox One, 1080p 30 FPS on the PlayStation 4, 1800p 30 FPS on PlayStation 4 Pro, and on Xbox One X, you actually have the options of two different modes, a high quality and a high performance mode. With the high quality mode, you get a full 4K presentation, and with the high performance mode, you get a 1440p, both at 30 FPS, and you also have the chance to unlock the game's frame rate with the ability to hit 60 frames per second, although I wouldn't recommend doing this, as the frame rate does become a little bit more choppy and it does make things a little harder to deal with. Now, of course, on PC, you can hit whatever frame rate your computer is capable of putting out. Unfortunately, not very many options on which you can turn down on PC in order to hit your desired frame rates. And one of the things that I absolutely despise is that you have to restart the game every time you change a setting. For most of the settings, not for all of them, mind you, but for this is just super annoying. Especially when you want to change one setting to see how it affects performance, have to restart the entire game, then go back in. Very annoying. Same thing happens with the Xbox One X version when you change the quality modes. Have to restart the game. Absolutely hate that. Now, performance on the consoles for the most part is solidly locked at 30 FPS, and though at some points there are slowdowns, this is really nothing that I would say would completely ruin the game. And PC performance, for the most part, also hits 60 FPS pretty decently on my 1080 Ti. However, on my laptop with a 1060, I really had a lot of difficulties hitting 60 FPS, but turning down some settings, I was able to hit it for most of the time. And I want to go ahead and touch on the audio a little bit. Something that I really want to talk about is just how amazing the soundtrack is. I always love soundtracks when it comes to these sort of space adventure exploration games, and this game is no different. This game actually comes with sort of a synthy vibe to it. You have guitar riffs in there whenever you accomplish something cool. Whenever combat happens, it's just the music is really good. But there's something else that I really do like about it, is that it also takes advantage of silent moments, especially when you're exploring. Sometimes a silent moment is better than having a lot of music to go with it. It really does lend to that gravity of loneliness. And as well as the other sounds of No Man's Sky, the game's also very good. Sound of a mining laser hitting rock, or when your spaceship takes off from a planet, firing photon cannons, the impact of hitting an asteroid with your ship, it sounds good. Sometimes though, however, whenever you're attacking certain things, it doesn't really lend a weight to attacking that. That's a little bit on the audio side and a little bit on the visual side as well. And animals and everything else, for the most part, sound really okay. There's not really any voice acting to talk about. Most of the aliens in the game speak through grunts, and everything is told through text. Nothing really to talk about audio-wise. And now for my final summary of the game and my final rating. No Man's Sky is an interesting game, and a game that was a victim of an unusual amount of hype that was placed on it, not through entirely Hello Games' faults. Now, I feel that the game is vast amounts better than when I first played it back in 2016. These new updates have breathed life into something that I thought would never get life, especially with how boring and lifeless and monotonous it was. Between adding new things to do, graphical enhancements, base building, a deeper crafting system, more ways to earn money, a better upgrade system, 4-player co-op, and bringing the game to Xbox, I think now is the perfect time to get into No Man's Sky. But do remember, guys, that I don't think that this game is perfect, and I still think it's far from it. But the complaints on the game, such as the repetitive planets, and sometimes also the repetitiveness that you get with crafting, the tediousness of having to keep up with your various systems, the bland story, and sometimes procedural generation just getting a little bit out there, definitely do not detract what Hello Games has done to improve No Man's Sky. And now for my final verdict, I'm actually going to give this game a 7.5 out of 10, guys. And I do think that the game is absolutely worth it right now at full price. On Xbox One, it is $50. And I think on the PlayStation and PC, it is at $30. This is a fun space game, guys. And it will scratch the itch of any explorer out there. For anyone who is looking for something to sink time to. Guys, thank you all so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, please do feel free to like, favorite, comment, and definitely subscribe if you enjoyed, guys. I'll see you on the next review. Goodbye.